This is The Wind, a podcast from a desk in the woods. On this episode, naming mountains, Brazilian punk music, the Aeolian harp, and make sure to stick around to the end for a lot of frogs.
The Wind. With Phil Corbett.
A few years ago, I found a handsaw in the mountains, sticking out of the snow. I carried it deep into the woods high in the Sierra Nevada. I brought it to an aspen grove, where there was a pine tree that had been blown over in a storm. And so I began cutting. Every day I would snowshoe from my house up into this valley and cut a little more. The snow began to melt around me, and when finished cutting, I carried the pieces to a stand of lodgepole pine at the edge of a meadow. Here, I stacked the wood into a desk. This is where I make the podcast. I've spent a lot of time in this place, commuting by snowshoe, then on foot, and I've been listening to the way the wind blows through the trees. If I listen close, I can hear the creek in the distance. I can hear the season by the crunchiness of the aspen leaves, how pliant the willows are clacking against each other. I can hear the big mountain face behind me. The giant gnarled ponderosa pines bend and swish up in the granite fields. If I listen close, I can hear the topography. I've been trying to carry this practice home with me. I found that if I listen close to people speaking or singing, I can hear the topography within them, too. The peaks and valleys, the way they capture and fold air and send it back into the world. And that is what this show is about. The way the wind moves through the world, the way it moves through lungs and mouths, across boundaries and borders. It's about relearning to listen. I'm Phil Corbett, and this is a live performance of The Wind. The valley where my desk is has no name. I've scoured old maps, spoken to old guys on the log road, but no dice. It is on the edge of wilderness, and people don't come back here much. I think that's both why and because it is nameless. My desk is on the traditional homelands of the Washoe. In the Sierra, at their far western edge of Nevada, the Washishu are a people that have always surrounded Lake Tahoe. They call the lake Da'au Aga. Tahoe is an anglicization of their word Da'au, but many of their other place names have been lost. Genocide and forced boarding schools worked mercilessly to erase the language that the land itself formed.
We lost, the names for all of our places. I mean, we had a name for everything that was here. Irvin Jim, hung loyalty chairman for the community, and we're in Hope Valley at the Blue Lakes parking lot.
As colonies took root in this part of the world, the settlers laid new names on top of this landscape. And they formalized those names with maps.
Explorers were going out west and naming a peak or a valley or a mountain or a river. And then perhaps 10 years later, a different group would go out and give the same mountain a different name.
This is Jennifer Runyon.
I'm the senior researcher for the U.S. Board on Geographic Names.
I called Jennifer during a contentious battle to rename a nearby California peak with a Confederate moniker. She explained the rules of naming a place to me. You cannot name after a living person. Local use is important. Specific capitalization standards.
If you're honoring a person with a name, they have to have been deceased at least 5 years. They have to have some association. We also have a wilderness names policy, which basically prohibits any names in the federal wilderness area unless there's really a compelling need to name the place. We'd like to leave wilderness areas untouched.
What is the reasoning behind that? I'm assuming it's that by naming a place, you're kind of, stripping it of its wildness?
Exactly right. That's the board's feeling. And the idea is to leave the land untouched. And names all over the map are really another way of impacting the landscape.
The peak at the center of this fight was named by Confederate sympathizers in a long-gone mining town. No buildings are left, and the artifacts are just names on the map. After the far right marched in Charlottesville, a concerned insurance agent in California filed an application to remove Jefferson Davis's name from this dramatic volcanic plug. And when that application came through, Alpine County called up Irvin Jim.
I just kind of took it from there and took it to my great aunt, Dinah Pete. She is an elder for my community, and I asked her if she come up with a name for it. And the way it sets the point, and then the point over here in that saddle that goes between them, that's what she named it, Deek Dagoet, and it's that saddle going over between them.
And so that's the translation?
Yeah, the saddle going over.
They then sent the application to the state board for approval, where Deek Dagoet stalled on politics. But eventually, under pressure, it did succeed, and it is now the peak's name on most maps. A name on a map attempts to mark what's beneath. Winter in São Paulo, Brazil. My close friend and bandmate Emily finishes a beer in a punk bar in the hilly neighborhood of Pinheiros. It's our first night here, and as we step outside, samba pours with us into the street. A few blocks down, we find a big gate that says necropolis. It's wide open as we pass just after dusk, and we step inside. Past the maintenance truck, rows of tombs and statues and mausoleums are a small city of their own. In the cemetery, I fixate on the names of generations past. In this place new to me, each name has a corresponding skeleton somewhere below. When we return to the gate, we're locked in. The cemetery is fortified by a 10-foot stone wall, the top of which is decorated with a string of razor wire. Just up the street from the necropolis lives Sandra Coutinho. She plays bass in the legendary Brazilian punk band Mercénarias.
With my friends, the girls, we could do everything and express the way we wanted. And I knew that if I was on stage, I was like an army, we are together to do, and everybody that don't like it.
Mercénarias was formed in 1982, during the later days of the military dictatorship.
The first song we did is ta 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 ta. So I do don 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 don, and the guitar. Then he put tum tum ta tum tum ta 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 tum tum ta. So then the music is like this.
Sandra plays the bass like the crack of a whip. Power from below.
What I think now, when I see the history of everything, it's you have a movement, and then the next one is just the movement to go against the other movement. Because, of course, that all the scene is changing every day. So the political things, social, the economic things, and sometimes this art don't express anymore what we are feeling.
Back in the cemetery, I scratch up into a tree. Climbing uneasily out onto a branch, the text on the grave's not legible up here. I belly out above the tombs, the razor wire, the street. Emily and myself drop over the wall back into the land of the living. Dusk, summer, smoke, desert, the sun is beet red, dripping over the gray mountains, pouring itself past the horizon into the Pacific. We stand on an unnamed dry lake bed, and the wind is relentless. Our faces are as cracked as the ground, and we erect a heavy wooden box with a snake carved into the front. When the box hears the dusty wind, it begins to sing. An Aeolian harp is one of the few instruments not played by human touch. Instead, it's played by the wind, and it's an instrument that I find endlessly fascinating.
Well, I understand why you're compelled. They're magical.
This is Pulitzer Prize-winning composer John Luther Adams. We spoke on a cool autumn day via satellite phone.
It's an instrument that allows us to pull the music directly out of the air. The music comes down out of the sky and across the strings of the instrument and into our ears and down through our bodies and into the earth.
The way this instrument works is that you stretch a string or many strings over a resonant body, like a box or a cylinder. And then you just put it outside. The wind plays a whole spectrum of sound as it passes over the strings, triggering different harmonics and oscillation and swells as air hits different parts of the instrument. The harp translates the movement of the wind into something more audible.
My relationship to the Aeolian harp has been as a way to extend the reach of my ears to allow me to hear things that I couldn't otherwise hear, at least not so clearly.
There's a mountain in the Sierra that I think has a perfect name. Dao Mat Lashing Dalaak in Washoe, the mountain that slides. In English, more or less the same. On the southeast face, there is a giant scar, a gash from which the mountain slowly bleeds more and more earth down into the valley below. The last big slide in 1983 completely displaced a small lake, which then washed out several houses and the highway. But it's been doing this for a long, long time. In preparation for this season, I walked to the top of this mountain. I do this every time something important is happening in my practice, a tour, a new season, lost direction. I walk to the top up the utility road, and if you're imagining a pristine high Sierra peak, in form, yes, but in adornment, it wears a crown of industry. A dozen radio towers. This is where the radio comes from, and I stand at their feet and give tribute. Apart from an electric hum and the summer zephyr whipping at the granite boulders, it's quiet. And yet, so much sound passes through me. Classic rock, Walmart country, NPR News, I'm Jack Spear, Norteña, the voices of faraway angry men, baseball, if you're lucky, weather, words piling up silently beneath or above my auditory threshold. But today, before the sun sets, I find a place on the tallest radio tower. A jack in which to plug a microphone cable. I unspool, amble down the mountain. I run the wire over switchbacks down the granite field through the gnarled little aspen grove, miles and miles of XLR. I pass lodgepole pines and the highway and the ridge and the wire trails behind me as I arrive at a pond. It's not named on the map because its name does not cleanly translate. I plug this side of the cable into a microphone, and the pond announces itself, broadcasting on FM for miles in every direction. It says, and I take that to be its name. Not one laid on top, but one spoken from below. Back at my desk, the aspen have budded out. The green leaves quake in the warm air, soft in the breeze, then they turn yellow and sibilant, The willows spring from the snow, the birds arrive to meet them, and when the creek slowly wanes, they too leave with the light of the sun. And the wind blows from the west, scraping over the ridge and down into this mountain valley, following the flow of the water through groves and pine stands and meadows and dying grass, the lungs of little frogs, and then it passes over. There is a quick moment as it touches my ear. Air sounding eternally moving towards some distant horizon. For a full catalog of episodes, follow the wind in your podcast app. This is primarily an audio show. Links to subscribe in the video description. This independent podcast is listener supported. If you'd like to join the community, head to patreon.com/thewind. Thank you for being here and keep listening.